Hello, and welcome to this edition of All About Hopkinton, the original HCAM series created to bring you the people and organizations that help make our community the great place that it is. Sitting in for Mary Arnott, I'm Jim Cousins. There are a lot of groups out there, and a lot of people dedicating their time, energy, and talents to improve some aspect of life in Hopkinton. I am privileged to be sitting here, talking with them and sharing their stories with you. Joining me today is Dee King, Hopkinton High School's Athletic Director. Dee, thanks so much for being on our show today.
Thanks for having me.
And congratulations on your new position.
Thank you so much.
All right, now we will get there, but before we get there, I'd like to know a little bit about you.
Okay.
So where did you grow up and where did you go to school?
So I grew up in the faraway land of Framingham, so not too far down the road. So I spent all my life in Framingham until I went off to college. I went to Trinity College in Connecticut, and then from there I continued on to get my master's at BU.
Oh, excellent.
Yep.
I went to BU undergraduate.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Very
So
nice.
what did you study at school?
So I was a psychology undergrad at Trinity, and then I continued on to BU to get my master's of counseling.
Excellent.
Yep.
I was a psychology minor.
No way.
Yeah, it's like
Look
crazy.
at this.
And my wife was a psychology major.
Okay, so that's
psych
a lot of
everywhere.
common ground right there.
Yeah, yeah. So, so that's obviously kind of like, I would call it a caring type of college path, you know. And so what were you like when you were going through college and thinking about career paths? What were you thinking that you might be interested in?
I really wasn't sure, actually. I knew that I liked psychology. I had taken a couple classes and a couple intro classes and different things, and it's just the one that really stuck out to me as I want to know more about this. I'm interested in this, and it really kind of grabbed me in. I've always been interested in human relationships and interactions and reading emotion and all that kind of stuff, so it drew me in, and so I went through my whole undergrad really unsure of what I wanted to do, but just knowing that I liked psychology.
Yeah.
And then after undergrad, I took a job in an engineering field, which was related to nothing that I studied and wasn't really a primary interest to me, but it was a job that was helping pay my bills after college.
Yes.
But it prompted me to think about what I really wanted to do. And so at that point, I decided that I wanted to go back to grad school for psychology. And one day, something just clicked that I want to work with high school students and I want to study psychology. So what can I do with that? And so I thought about school counseling. So I applied to BU's program, I got in, I went, and it was just a really good choice. And so from there, I got an opportunity to be a counselor and work with high school students, helping them through their high school years, helping them with the college process, managing all the stresses that come along with that. And yeah, that kind of brought me through my, my degree and into my professional role until now.
Yeah, it's so interesting. You talked about how when you were interested in psychology and all the emotions and stuff, I was thinking like, oh, high school kids and emotions, that's a good read right there because they're so out there.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yep.
So what was it like going through the counseling graduate school? Like what types of, like give me a couple highlights of the courses and the things that you learned there.
So the courses were really cool, and BU had an accelerated program. So it was a one-year program that you're taking all of your graduate classes and doing a full-time internship.
Wow.
And you're doing everything all at once, so they just kind of throw you into the fire. But I actually really liked it that way because you're fully immersed in it. So at the time, I was taking all my classes, and I actually was fortunate enough to do my internship at Hopkinton High School. So that's sort of what introduced me to the world of Hopkinton.
Yeah.
So I was very lucky for that. But in grad school, I thought the approach that they took at BU to teaching the counseling classes was really interesting. For example, we had to do a group therapy class, and the way they ran the class was actually group therapy. So you were put on the spot. Whether you had something to talk about or not, you were in it. And so it was a cool, realistic approach to it of just, we had to manage group dynamics and those kinds of things. So that was a cool thing. We also took a really cool cross-cultural perspectives class, which just opens your eyes to awareness and what goes on for people outside of our own individual world, and just maintaining perspective on that. So to me, those are things that whether you're going into counseling or not, they're just good things to have perspective on.
Oh yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, I really think that this type of knowledge should be given to everyone, because there are certain skills out there that are just universal.
Right. They can call it life training, right?
Yeah, exactly. There definitely should be a high school class called life training.
Yes.
Yeah. So, how long was the internship that you did?
Sure. So it was a full year.
Really?
Yep. It was a full school year. So I interned with Kathy Hebden, who was one of the counselors at the time, and she was amazing, an amazing mentor on so many levels of just how to conduct yourself in hardworking, ethical, put students at the forefront of everything that she did, and I, in so many ways, modeled how I carried myself as a counselor after her. And I was very lucky to be placed with someone, and it was sort of by chance actually that it worked out that way, but that just was so dedicated to the field and cared about it so much. So I was very fortunate to work with her during that time. Yeah.
Now, how did it work? Like, was there a particular class that the high school students were going through that you were a part of, or was there something that was set up? How did it?
Sure. So different counseling programs, graduate programs, will reach out to local high schools and ask if they are willing to take an intern. So Hopkinton High School was willing to take an intern that year. So like I said, it was kind of by chance. But and then in my time there, I was lucky because the counselors at the high school work with all 4 grades. So I got exposure to working with students, grades 9 through 12, individual counseling, some group counseling, teaching classes, all those different things. And at the time, what was fun too is that I was coaching basketball actually over in Clockerland and Ashland. So, but it was fun because I was able to connect with some of the students in an athletic realm too, because of course we were playing Hopkinton a lot. So it was kind of fun to have the little rivalry built in, working in Hopkinton, coaching in Ashland, and it was always a really nice and collegial dynamic off the court. On the court, we were going head to head, right? But now I'm officially in Hiller athletic land. So
of course, yeah. So that's all right. So now you've got the Hopkinton connection. You got a little bit of Ashland connection. So you're out of graduate school, and where do you work?
So unfortunately, Hopkinton did not have an opening in that year that I had graduated. So I actually got hired as a counselor at Norwood High School, which was an amazing opportunity. Different demographic than Hopkinton, gave me exposure to working with students who had some different challenges and different dynamics, but they were so good to me in Norwood. I had a great experience there and really enjoyed my work there, and have some of my most lifelong friends actually from that year there. Kidding. Yeah, which is really cool. But then the next year a job opened up in Hopkinton, and my heart was being pulled in that direction. So I applied for the job and was so fortunate to be hired and been here ever since.
So, so I have to admit, I don't know where Norwell is.
Norwood.
Norwood. Oh, where's Norwood?
So Norwood kind of is near Dedham. Let's see, what else does it border? You know, right around Westwood.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
All right. So what was your title there?
I was a school counselor there.
School counselor. Now, is that different than, it sounds like it's different than guidance counselor?
No, it's actually the same.
It's the same.
Yeah, it's school counselor. They changed the name. It used to be called guidance counselor. Now it's school counselor. But in that role, you're actually doing both mental health, academic counseling, and college prep work.
Now, is that crazy different? Because when I was going to high school, I know many years ago, right? It was really just, you know, where do you want to go for college? This is what you need to do, and get out there and do it.
I think it is a little bit different, and I'm going back on my own experience. My guidance counselor in high school was such a nice person, just one of the kindest people, but I didn't see him that much. Granted, I did go to Framingham High, so just a much larger population.
Yeah.
But when I came into my internship year here in Hopkinton, I was surprised at just how well the counselors knew their students, how much contact they had. So I think part of the process that's really interesting and unique here is that in the counseling department, they really do know their students. So for example, when you're working with a student through an academic concern or something else, you a lot of times have perspective on actually who they are and what's going on for them. As you move forward into the college piece, it doesn't seem like you're blindly just recommending a school to a student. You're actually thinking about who they are, what their interests are, what type of community they might want to be in, you know, so that it's a pretty involved process. But by the time they're juniors and seniors, we've known them for a few years.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's pretty involved.
I mean, that sounds like incredibly detailed. I mean, how many kids can you be responsible for to go to that level of depth?
Well, we have around about 200 kids on our caseload in the counseling department, which sounds like a lot.
It does.
But compared to other towns, we're pretty lucky. But I would also say that the Hopkinton Counseling Department really serves the population well. It does a lot more than I would say some schools do. I mean, we've had feedback from parents who are so grateful, and they say, I paid a ton of money for my son or daughter to go to private school, and they didn't get this kind of attention. So I think that that's credit to the culture that's been created here in Hopkinton, and also really dedicated staff. You know, Evan does a great job at the high school, Evan Bishop, the principal, of setting a standard in terms of what the expectations are, and it trickles down, and people are dedicated and they care about the kids. And so I think the culture kind of has been created, but then it continues to foster itself.
Right. I just I'm really interested in how you become a counselor for this level of detail. You know what I mean? It just seems like how do you interact with the kids? How do you get to know them so that you can, you know, get to counsel them?
Yeah.
Is it all them making appointments? Do you what's your job like there?
So in the counseling department, every student gets a meeting every year. So that's 200 meetings right there, just off the bat. But we saw, you know, when I was in that role, we saw the kids so much more than that. And some kids didn't need a ton, so they might not come in as much. But there were other kids that were in there multiple times a week, and they could create their own appointments. We could call them down if there was something that came to our attention is, oh, I want to talk to the student about it, or oh, I'm concerned about this, let me bring them down. So I would say that, you know, we could have meetings with kids for a number of different reasons. And a lot of kids who had different needs would reach out to us more frequently, or we might see them more frequently. So it really was kind of dependent on the individual, I guess. But I'd say in the counseling department at the high school, a lot of time is spent getting to know the kids. And that was always sort of our primary overarching goal is, you know, we have to get our stuff done and things done, but if you build relationships with kids and they know that you care about them, then they're going to allow you to care about them. Right.
And is that all through one-on-one meetings, or does the guidance, like, I'm sorry, I don't mean guidance, I mean the counseling department, do you have like activities or events, or how does that work?
A little of both, not necessarily social events, but we have one-on-one meetings, but there are also different various nights offered throughout the year. There's a college planning night, there's a sophomore night, freshman night, you know, there's different nights that Lee Greco, the counseling department head, spearheads, and it's an opportunity for parents and students to come in and get more information and learn about what we're doing. But there's also, the counselors teach classes during the day, so there are there are group classes that are taught.
I see. And what are the classes about?
So freshman guidance seminar is a transition to high school type seminar where you learn the basics of the high school, need to know information. You'll learn about just classes that you need to take to graduate, and how do you calculate a GPA, and what stresses might come up during high school, and what activities can you join. So it's really sort of nuts and bolts. Sophomore year, the students take a sophomore career workshop, so they take a Myers-Briggs personality inventory and do some career interest inventories. And I always used to joke with the kids, you know, if by the end of these few sessions you have your whole life figured out, I'll be very impressed. But it's more introducing them to, what do you think about when you're thinking about a career? You know, what's important to you? What are your values? What are you, those kinds of things. Junior year, it's primarily college and post-secondary planning preparation. And then senior year, there's not actually a class that's taught, but it's a lot of one-on-one meetings in terms of individualizing the process for the kids.
So from Norwood, what was your next stop after Norwood?
It was Hopkinton.
You came right to Hopkinton?
I came right to Hopkinton,
as a counselor? Okay.
Yep. So that was like a lateral move in terms of position. But
Right.
I had such a good experience here with my internship. I felt really invested in the community. So I just lucked out that Evan decided to go to his assistant principal role at the time.
Yeah.
Opened up a spot.
Nice.
Yep.
Now, was Norwood a bigger system or about the same?
About the same, maybe.
Okay.
Even a tiny bit smaller.
So did you have about 200 people in Hopkinton?
Actually, I had more in Norwood. I think I
Okay.
had 320 maybe, and I had 200 in Hopkinton. So
Wow.
got to give the kids in Hopkinton more attention purely based on time.
Yeah, yeah. And so have you had experience with De-Stress Week?
I have.
So what do you think of that? Because I've heard both sides of the coins on that.
Yeah. I think it's, there's a lot of positive feedback and a lot of critiquing on it. And how can we put De-Stress Week into 1 week? And I think that, if you take a step back and you think, well, no one's going to really de-stress in a week, but it's putting focus on sort of what's the big picture. It's important to take a step back, and I think what De-Stress Week does is it does allow that actually in the moment, but it also models how to take the step back.
Right.
What kinds of things that you could do to take a step back from what's a crazy day-to-day that we all have. And the kids nowadays, their schedules are crazy, the expectations of them are crazy. And our society has sort of created that. We're all on our emails at night answering things. And
Yes.
I was joking with someone the other day of even when I was a kid, looking back to the days, when my dad and parents got home from work, they were home. There was no email. If someone wanted to get in touch, they were calling our house phone and rotary dialing.
Yeah, yeah.
And so there's just such a communication demand nowadays and an expectation demand for professionals and for kids. And sometimes I think we all lose sight of what it means to actually be in the moment and just be a kid and take a step back and go play football outside with your friends or go, play guitar and sing on the lawn, with whatever it is that you like to do. And so I think De-Stress Week, it's a really awesome effort and a lot of work goes into it. And again, no big issue is going to be solved in that 1 week, but it's modeling what good practices.
Yeah, and you mentioned the schedule. I have never seen a crazier schedule. A rotating 7-day schedule over a 5-day school week.
Yep.
It's crazy.
It is.
Yeah.
But
So
it's dynamic.
Yes.
So it's not the same thing every day, which is kind of nice.
Right. All right. So I find this very fascinating. However, we are running a little bit short on time. So I want to transition to your new role.
Absolutely.
So how did you go from being a counselor to being the athletic director?
Sure. So athletics has always been a huge part of my life ever since I can remember as a little girl. I've always been interested in sports. It's been a part of my family's life.
What sports did you play?
Growing up, I played soccer and basketball.
Okay.
So, since at the youth level, I played both of those, and then in high school, I played soccer and basketball, and then I continued on and played basketball at Trinity. So that was a really fun experience. But even throughout that time, I was always interested in other sports. I love football. I love watching games, going to games. I was the manager of my high school's girls lacrosse team because I couldn't play because of my basketball club schedule, but I loved being there and just being part of it. Nice. So it's always just sort of been weaved into my life in different ways. Yeah. And I coached. I was fortunate after grad school, I got an opportunity to coach basketball in Ashland as an assistant during that grad school year. And then the next year, Smokey Maresi, who was the coach at the time, who's legendary Massachusetts Hall of Fame basketball coach, he retired. So then I got hired as the girls basketball coach there. Okay. So that kind of began my coaching career. And then after 3 years in Ashland, I got the opportunity to go back to Framingham where I grew up. So that was a fun and unique experience to be able to coach in the town that helped me develop as a person and as an athlete and as a student. So sports has always been present. Through Hopkinton, I was lucky enough in my counseling role that they allowed me to sort of have a foot in athletics. I helped run the captain's leadership council, so worked with the athletic captains on student leadership and what does it mean to be a captain besides just, going and flipping a coin at half field or having a C on your arm. What does it mean?
So do you work with the coaches or do you work with the captains?
Worked directly with the captains.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's a really fun part. Something I actually look forward to doing in my role now too.
Okay.
And I also was the NCAA recruiting liaison between the athletic department and the counseling department. So I'm familiar with that process and helping kids who are looking to play sports in college navigate that process, which on top of the college process, when you add that piece of it into it, it's a lot to handle and think about and sort of know what to do. So I got to do that, and I got some other opportunities to do some leadership development at the high school in Hopkinton. And so when this position opened up for me, I just said, this is what I love to do, and I really love my counseling role. So what was cool about looking at athletics was I'm still going to get to work with people. I'm still going to get to work with coaches and have relationships and talk about what I love and what they love and do the same with students. So I figured, why not go for it and throw my hat in the ring? And they took a chance on an unknown kid.
That's really, really cool. Because, like, your story brings to mind movies like Remember the Giants and like all these really, really cool motivational ones where kids are learning, huge life lessons through athletics.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how long have you been the athletic director?
Since July 1st.
All right, just almost 2 months.
So much experience right now.
Yeah.
A couple months.
So it must be a real crazy time, like in between, like getting ready for the school year and everything's just about to start and get cranked up and stuff.
Absolutely, just familiarizing myself with everything. There's so much to learn and so much I'm excited about and that I want to do, but tempering that a little bit to make sure all of the logistics are taken care of. So it's just, really sinking my teeth in right now and learning the job and getting to know what the coaches need and what's helpful to them and doing some of that relationship building on a different level, because I actually knew a lot of the coaches just from my work as a counselor, but getting to know them in a different and more involved capacity through their actual sport.
Right. So did you get a chance to meet with the prior athletic director and kind of go over things and see what the lay of the land is?
Yep. So I had worked with Eric during my time at Hopkinton in terms of the Captain's Council and some different capacities. So he was very, willing to help me and meet with me to go over things. So we did get a chance to do that.
What are some of the things that you do in your role now?
So a lot of different things. So I guess from a logistical standpoint, making sure schedules are set and that all the teams have their games to play and that officials are going to show up and fields are ready. And so a lot of the behind the scenes work that goes on to make an athletic contest happen. And I should pause to say that it's not me that's making that happen. I'm part of it, but there are a lot of different people involved. Lou Sanborn, who works in the athletic office with me, is like my right-hand woman and does so much of the behind-the-scenes work. Our administration is super helpful, but we have our buildings and grounds crew and our maintenance crew who do so much. And our custodial staff. I mean, there are just so many people who make things happen. And prior to being involved in it, even as a student athlete when I was in high school, I had no clue what was happening behind the scenes. I just showed up, played, thought things just miraculously happened. And, so it's to have that perspective of actually how many people work so hard to make something, like a soccer game that seems simple, but to actually make it happen. There's a lot of people involved in that, and a lot of hard work that goes into it. So it's to appreciate that,
And it's like not even just your school. You got to make all these schedules mesh with all these other schools. Must be crazy.
But the nice part too is that the athletic directors in the Tri-Valley League have been super helpful. All have reached out to welcome me and ask how they can help, and that's been a really nice part of it. But there's a lot of logistical stuff that needs to happen in terms of the job description, but I think it's the other part of it, which, the logistics are so important, but it's also for me really being able to get to know student athletes and coaches and figure out how you can support them and be a visible person who's present and cares, genuinely cares about what's going on, and understanding that athletics is a vehicle to so much more, you know, and so many of these kids aren't going to go on to play professional sports or something one day. So what is the value in high school sports, and you know, how can we make it positive for kids, and you know, understand that there's lessons and values in everything that happens, win, lose, tough day, great day, all that kind of stuff.
You know, it's like really, really, your background it's going to be so interesting to see like how you bring that to your role, and you know what that's going to mean to the kids, because the type of work that you do as a counselor, and I see it transferring into athletic director, is part of a group that I call life changers, because you know you work to help other people be the best that they can be, and like that's your job.
I hope so.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Welcome to Hopkinton Coffee Break.
A very special dessert done by a woman from Hopkinton that I've started using regularly.
We had your residents participating both as vendors and as shoppers, and that was so much fun.
Real Hopkinton Housewives, if you're on Facebook, you will have a blast.
Thanks for joining
Cheers, guys.
us. It's been a great,
Thank you.
Yeah, good to see you
See
too.
you guys.
Bye.
Just a minute, folks.
It's Dive-In Drive-In time, and we got a great western for you today.
Dive-In Drive-In is a new program featuring the HCAM staff's favorite B movies. We hope you enjoy these treasured films of yesteryear.
Even if we don't get paid, there ain't no job we trade. We're hauling freight and sing the sing along with Santa Fe.
So check out the HCAM TV website at hcam.tv for movie days and showtimes.